What does Alexander discover in the urgent meeting on the night of the full moon? How will Isabella's unease and desire for freedom affect their relationship? As the truth gradually unfolds, can they face the storm that is coming together? Join us on this adventure. Hit that subscribe button and don't miss the intense confrontation between Isabella and Alexander. 21 Isabella SP. OV. But Alexander, you don't understand. I don't want to be here. I just have a cold. I've had a cold a million times before. I argued with him. You wouldn't wake up. You were asleep for hours, wouldn't eat, wouldn't drink. What do you expect me to do? He snapped his hands, pushing on my shoulders, forcing me to retort to a lying down position. I want to leave. I'm not staying here. I refused, pushing his hands of me, sitting up once again. I felt like I had been lying down for years. My whole body felt stiff. His jaw clenched tightly and his hand that was wrapped around the bar of the bed began to turn white as he was squeezing so hard. I try help you and you still argue with me. You're sick and that's why you are here. Get that into your thick skull. He gritted out, his voice dangerously low. No, get this into your thick skull. I am bloody fine. I feel fine now. If you just let me sleep it off, do something without you having control of the situation, then we wouldn't be here right now. You're a controlling dick. I rushed out while I still had to confidence too. His whole body froze, his eyes frosting over slightly before his hands let go of his grip on the pole, and in a short amount of time he was gone, slamming the door behind him on the way out. I sucked in a breath before grabbing the OV, and yanking it out, throwing it down. I pushed myself off the bed. I did feel a little lightheaded, but nothing to be in hospital for. I made my way over to the sofa, slumping down on it, reaching for my shoes that lay on it, tiredly pulling them on. Even though I had slept for ages, I still felt tired. Alexander's jumper covered the top half of my body, as well as some of the bot Richard, but I could see my shorts poking out under the ends. What are you doing? His voice startled me, causing me to leap up from the sofa as he stared at me, his chest moving up and down as if he was trying to retrain himself from something. I'm leaving, I replied, proceeding to pull up my hair, tying it quickly with the bobbin around my wrist. Get back in the bed. Before I have to ask you again, he lowly ordered, taking steps towards me. I will admit he intimidated me, but not near as much as he did when I first got here. But now, him acting all calm scared me all over again. He usually screamed at me, roared me until he was blue in the face, but now he was acting calm. But Alexander, I'm fine. See, look, feel my head. I don't even have a temperature anymore. I explained, reaching out and grabbing his hand, forcing it to go to my head. He furrowed his eyebrows, probably shocked at the fact that I was allowing him to be in a 2 feet radius of me. I'm not a doctor, but I can tell when you're lying. I'm not stupid. You have lighthead. I can tell. You feel dizzy and like you're about to throw up, he responded, taking his hand away from my head, placing on my neck. His other hand grabbed onto the jumper that was covering my body before he pulled it towards him, causing me to fall into his chest. I felt his hot breath fan my face. Before I could do anything, he leaned down his head, placing his soft lips on mine. I was leaned up slightly, so I was standing so on my tippy toes. Sparks erupted from my lips, traveling throughout my whole body. For a minute I forgot where I was, what situation I was in. For once I felt like a teenager kissing someone that I liked. As soon as the kiss began, it ended, and I found myself like I wanted to continue. Alexander now stood at the other side of the room, his chest moving heavily. Alexander? I questioned, taking a step towards him before he spun around in his spot, taking long strides before stopping right in front of me. Get on the bed, he mumbled before hauling me onto the bed, as if nothing had just happened. I'll be back as soon as I can, okay? I'm only going to be an hour at the most, Alexander's irritated voice explained as he rose from his seat on the sofa. You can't leave me alone with them, I mumbled. Even though I necessarily didn't want Alexander bothering me, the doctors bothered me even more. They came in like every 10 minutes pulling at me. I know it's their job and everything, but they treated me like I was a 5-year-old. They talked about me like, oh, wasn't even in the room. They asked Alexander all the questions as if he was my guardian or something. Baby, I have 2 men outside this door and several around the premises. You'll be just fine. You call out if you need anything and they'll come, okay? He reassured before he placed his lips on my forehead and turning around, leaving me in the room. Alexander's P.O.V. What was so important that you had to take me away from my mate? Your sickness, Luna, I growled out, slamming my car door behind me, making my way towards my beta Caleb. They're back, Alexander, the Crescent Moon Pack. Out, guys, sniffed them out on the borders, got 2 of them in the dungeons. Filled them with Wolfsbane, so shouldn't be waking up for a while, he explained. The Crescent Moon Pack, the pack that almost brought us down 5 years ago. I wasn't Alpha at the time, they killed our previous Alpha and that's when I took over. I worked the warriors day and night until we brought down the pack, eventually killing each and every member. They're all dead. It's impossible, I denied, shaking my head. It's possible, all right. There must have been some more now, no doubt they have grown more and turned more werewolves, building an army. Caleb sighed. Preparing for war, I finished. This is all I needed. My mate was in hospital and needed me. My pack was in danger and needed me, and I couldn't choose. I had chosen Isabella since she got here. I hadn't trained the wolves in months and I only shifted at night when she fell asleep. Now I would have to put them first. And Alexander, one of the mutts, he was carrying this, Caleb explained as he pulled something from his pocket, handing it to me. It was a piece of paper, a picture of a girl. My girl Isabella. 22 Isabella SP. OV. I rolled over in the uncomfortable bed, attempting to find a comfortable enough spot, which I had been trying to do for the past 20 minutes. It was 1 a.m. now and Alexander hasn't came back. He said he would only be an hour, but 1 hour turned into 2 and then 3, and now I'm here, in a cold dark room. Usually I'm used to Alexander's body heat keeping me warm, but all I had was a thin sheet. I never realized how much I relied on him until now, although I hated to admit it. I liked when I instantly got warmer when he pulls me in his arms every night. I liked when he made food, even though it was vile. I sighed, pulling myself of the bed, accepting that sleep wasn't going to come to me. I made my way over to the door, slightly twisting the handle, pulling it open, squinting at the bright light that lit up the halls. 2 men stood on either side of the door, and on instant they snapped their head towards me, their eyes widening slightly as if they didn't know what to do. Ugh, Isabella. What can we do for you? The one with blondish hair asked. He was dressed in a green hoodie along with a black pair of joggers. He looked not a lot older than me. Do you know what's taking Alexander so long? I asked, looking up at him, whereas he shared a look with the other man before looking down at me. He just has some business to attend to, he answered. It was easy to tell when he was lying as he looked at my jumper rather than at my face. At 1 o'clock on the morning, I retorted. I also wasn't stupid. He was probably in his bed at home, maybe with someone else, not giving a crap about me. The boy didn't say anything but nodded in reply before going back to his staring position, staring at the blank walls in front of him. I took a step out of the room only for the boy to quickly step out in front of me, blocking me from taking any more steps. Technically, Alexander told me not to touch you, but if you leave this room I have permission to lock you, and he informed me. His voice much more stern and hard than before. I felt my eyes flutter open, squinting at the harsh lights. I must have eventually fallen asleep. After that boy, who I earned his name was Ollie, locked me in here after I attempted to push past him. You're awake? Alexander's voice sounded from across the room. He must have just got in, as now he had changed into a black t-shirt and a pair of black trousers. I opened my mouth to speak before a knock sounded at the door, and in entered the same woman as yesterday. She glanced over at Alexander before turning her attention to me. Those blood tests, we're going to take them now if that's all right. She looked back at Alexander as if she was asking him. I don't need a blood test, I refused, causing her gaze to land back on me. I was not under any circumstances getting another needle in my arm. I looked over at Alexander, who nodded towards the door, signaling for the nurse to leave. The quicker you do this crap, the quicker we can get out of here, he sighed, making his way over me, reaching out his hand, tucking my hair behind my ear once the woman left the room. Where were you last night? I questioned. I wasn't changing the topic, I was just curious. Stop changing the topic, he growled. Answer the question, I shot back, pushing myself up so that I was now in a sitting position on the bed. It's none of your business, I'm here now, aren't I? He stated, rolling his eyes. How come yesterday he was actually being kinda nice and now he was back to his annoying, arrogant, bipolar self? Take these in the morning and before you go to bed. Take this little one 3 times a day, Alexander, hours apart, and if you're the same in 3 days come back, but you should see an improvement. The nurse explained as she handed Alexander a plastic bag filled with different medicine tablets. I made my way towards the exit. Finally, after hours of waiting for my blood test results, I could go home. Or well, at least whatever you would call Alexander's house. I knew they would be clear, and I was right. They were overreacting for nothing. Alexander quickly caught up with me, his large hand grabbing a hold of mine as the cold outdoor air entered my lungs. It was so stuffy in that room, it felt good to be out in the air. He took long strides before stopping in front of the same black car as I'd been in before. He unlocked it, opening the door for me to get in the passenger side before making his way around to the driver's side. Before going back, can you stop at the shop? I questioned, buckling on my seat belt, trying to hide my forming red face. What for? He asked quickly, starting up the car before looking over at me. I wouldn't normally be weird taking about this, but with him it felt strange. I was used to talking to girls about it, not boys. Do you know those things that girls need? For there I trailed off, hoping he would catch on, although his raised eyebrows told me otherwise. What things? He asked again. This time I saw a small smirk form on his face as he finally began to pull out of the hospital. You know what I'm talking about, I exclaimed, reaching over and punching him in the chest as he began laughing. Sure baby, he grinned, shaking his head as I slammed close the car door shut, turning the other way to hide my red face. My eyes fluttered open as I attempted to stretch out, only bang my arm straight of the side of the car. I groaned, sitting up in my seat. I must have fallen asleep, as now it was dark outside and I had a pain in my neck from the way I was lying. I looked at the time to see it was now 10 o'clock at night. We had been driving for several hours now. Alexander's house wasn't this far away from the hospital. Where are we going? I questioned, looking out the window to see that we were surrounded by trees. He glanced over at me. He had kinda changed in the past couple of days. He looked a little rough. Usually he was fresh awake. Always looked like he had all the energy in the world, whereas now stubble had began to form on his face as he glanced at me with tired eyes. Never mind then, I sighed after a few moments of silence. I felt as if the roles were being reversed now. At the beginning all I did was give Alexander the silent treatment, and all he wanted to do was talk. Now all I want to do is ask questions and he doesn't want to answer. After around another hour of driving, Alexander ignoring my presence only to pull over to make me take the pills that the nurse gave me. That's the only interaction we had. Until of course a small cottage came into view. I furrowed my eyebrows. There hadn't been a single person nor house since I had woken up. The car suddenly came to a halt outside the house, causing me to brake forward from the sudden impact. Alexander shook his head before leaning over and unbuckling my belt and jumping out of the car. I quickly pulled open the door, shutting it behind me. I glanced over at Alexander to see him pulling out a black case from the boot of the car, hauling it over his shoulder before making his way up the small lane. I followed quickly, speed walking in order to keep up with him. I'm not going to lie, the rustling and loudness of the wind scared me more than willingly walking with Alexander into this house. He came to a stop at the front door before pulling it open, his arm reaching out to grab me, pushing me in front of him. Sometimes that guy doesn't even realize his own strength. I stumbled forward, turning around, giving a glare at Alexander only to hit a hard chest. I flashed my head around in an instant. Who else was here? My eyes met a black shirt before they recalled up to reveal the face. I had been so curious to what had happened to Lucas. 23 Isabella SP. "Oh Lucas," I screeched, my hands coming up and pushing on his chest so I could fully examine him to make sure I wasn't just imagining him here. He was alive. He was actually still breathing. I was almost certain Alexander had killed his own brother. Now he seemed a little more less like the serial kidnapper person type. Pop my eardrums, then love, he smiled, grabbing a hold of my arms, pushing me towards him before squeezing me like I felt my organs were going to come out of my mouth. Alexander's breath quickened behind me as I felt his warm hand land on my shoulder. "Here, take this down to the first room on the left," he instructed as I turned to face him and grabbed the suitcase that was in his hand. I sighed, making my way out of the kitchen, quickly flashing my head over my shoulder to see that they were talking, but I couldn't hear a word they were saying. They always talked in such low voices when they didn't want me to hear what they were saying. I pushed open the door once I reached it to reveal a bedroom, which contained a double bed, a small wardrobe and a lamp in the corner. I plunked the suitcase onto the bed, sitting down next to it. I didn't know what to think now. Lucas was alive, and as amazing as it was, I no longer had a reason to hate Alexander. Well, other for the fact that he did kidnap me away from my family, practically ruined my life and probably scared me for life. On the other hand, I had plenty of other reasons to hate him. About an hour or so later, after I had planned what my life had come to, stared out the window at the never-ending amount of green and packed away the items of clothing in the case, I pulled open the bedroom door and made my way back down to the kitchen. "You finished unpacking? I was gonna go and get you, but I figured you want to take you time." In the meantime, I attempted to make food, but it didn't go so well. "So today it's noodles," Lucas rambled on as soon as I sat down on one of the bar stools. "Where's Alexander?" I questioned, looking around. I couldn't help think that this place was too quiet. "He has some business to attend to for a few days, love. Looks like you're stuck with me," he explained, looking up and smiling as he stirred the pot of noodles that was already steaming up. He had left. He left me alone with Lucas, of all people, in the middle of wherever the hell I am right now, without so much as a heads up. I sighed, shaking my head. I shouldn't care that he didn't even say goodbye, but the out feeling that had now settled in the bot Richard of my Richardac told me otherwise. Grab some plates in the drawer. I'm starving, he instructed before taking the saucepan filled with noodles over to the countertop. I stood onto my tippy toes looking in the bowl to see plain noodles that looked around 5 years out of date. I'm not eating that, I refused, pulling out one plate for him and pushing it over to him. You have a better idea. None of us are Gordon Ramsay, so in order for Alexander not to kill me, I will physically force these noodles down your throat. He sighed, attempting to keep a serious face before his laughter erupted at the end as he poured the noodles into the bowl, the boiling water splashing everywhere. I shook my head, a small smile on my face, before making my way over to the sofa and plopping myself down. I wasn't really hungry. The tablets I had to take made me feel like I was gonna throw up, so I'd rather not take the risk. I grabbed a hold of the remote, flicking through the channels until it landed on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. That's not happening. I do want to eat my food, thanks, Lucas exclaimed, snatching the remote from beside me and quickly changing the channel over. Don't be such a child, I rolled my eyes, leaning over and taking the remote from his hand, switching it back to my show. At Alexander's house, I'm always watching TV alone during the day, so I choose what I watch, and at nighttime he gets to choose. Isabella, he groaned, reaching his arm up and pushing me slightly. However, he didn't attempt to get back the remote, so I placed it under my leg and pulled a blanket over my legs. That should be us now. All safe and sound, Lucas grinned as he stuffed the pair of keys into his back pocket, slumping on the sofa. After he had just spent 15 minutes walking around the whole house making sure every window and door was locked. Little bit dramatic, I rolled my eyes, stuffing the price of popcorn into my mouth, while I kept my eyes trained on the screen. Trust me, my life is on the line here. If you so much come out with a scratch on your head, mine will be chopped off, Lucas exaggerated. I wouldn't bet on that, mate. If he cared so much, why would he leave me out here in the middle of nowhere with you? No offense, I mumbled, my eyes meeting his. None taken. I know Alexander's a dick, trust me, I had to live with him for like 18 years. But don't ever doubt that he doesn't care about you. Fuck, you're probably the most important person to him. I've never seen him like that before, being nice to someone. He begins. Being nice. Are you joking? He's the most bipolar person I know. 1 minute he's like, I'll never hurt you, then the next he's like, you dare try escape and you'll see what happens, I rambled. That's because he cares about you. Can't you see? He's scared that you will leave him, and trust me on this, Isabella, he'd never fucking physically hurt you. Yeah, maybe he can be rude, but if you think he's mean to you, you wouldn't like to be his enemy. He gives threats all because he just wants you to stay with him, and he knows making you fear him is the only way he can do that. Lucas raised his voice slightly as he leaned in closer to me. I could tell he was getting angrier with me as his face reddened slightly, and he took deep breaths, his chest rising up and down heavily. You're justifying him kidnapping me. Bloody hell, you are all crazy. If you think for a second I'm going to feel sorry for him when he's ruined my life, you're wrong. You know you're just like him, just like your older brother Alexander. I slightly raised my voice as I turned my whole body to face Lucas's. You don't understand, Isabella, he had to. He sighed. Then make me understand. I shot back, my voice fully raised now that it surprised me how loud I could be. It felt as if the next couple of seconds when I'm fast forward as all I remember is Lucas's lips landing on mine. A strong pain shot through my whole body, forcing me to fall backwards, slightly breaking the kiss. Shit, no, what did I do? Isabella. Lucas's voice frantically repeated over and over again as I felt him get up of the sofa. I sat up, the pain now gone. It felt as if someone had stuck a knife in my heart, and all of a sudden just pulled it out like there was no evidence of how it had gotten there. I looked over at Lucas to see him on the other side of the room as he flung his hands the air, small growls erupting from him before he stopped in front of a wall before full force taking his fist and pushing it through it. You're a knob, a pure twat. You know, punching a bloody wall, I sighed, dabbing Lucas's knuckle carefully with a wet towel. He hadn't spoken a word to me since he kissed me about 20 minutes ago. Around the same time when he punched full force into the wall, not only leaving a massive hole in it but also leaving his fist in a mess. Suddenly, as if he was on immediate alert, Lucas stood up, his whole body still as his eyes looked widely around the room. Go to the bathroom, lock yourself in it. He commanded, no fun or joke in his voice like there usually is, as he made his way towards the door. But I began but was soon cut off. Bathroom now? I'm not joking, he growled, his arm wrapping tightly around my wrist as he looked at me quickly before making his way out of the living room. For once I didn't want to piss him off more than I already did. So quickly I made my way over to the toilet and quickly locking the door behind me. I sat in the ground for a few minutes before I heard it, an enormous growl that felt like it shook the whole house. I quickly sprang up from my position on the floor, pulling my ear to do the door in an attempt to hear more. Was that Alexander? If it was, why would Lucas get so alarmed and make me sit in here? It mustn't have been him. I placed my shaky hand on the handle, almost twisting it before a loud bang on the door made me shriek and jump back slightly, my back hitting against the skin. Hushed, deep voices spoke on the other side, so low they were barely audible. My eyes widely searched around the bathroom for a weapon of some sorts, but to no luck. Unless shampoo was going to knock someone out, I was bloody useless. I took a deep breath, pushing myself off the sink before taking a few small steps towards the door and hoped that I would be able to pick up on a few things. All of a sudden, an even louder bang came from the door before someone had knocked it off its hinges and came flying towards me. My eyes widened as I took steps back the small bathroom, feeling more tiny than ever. In an instant, the door came flying down on top of me, and of course, to make matters worse, while falling, my clumsy self banged my head of the sink. That's all I remember before it went black. 24 Isabella SP. Oh. V, are you sure she's Isabella? If we got the wrong girl, he will be pissed. It's her. She was exactly where the mole to dia she would be. She's exactly like she is in the picture. Stop worrying, we've did our job. What is the exact plan? What does Alpha Richard want with her? Yes, I know it's revenge on Alexander, but how exactly is he going to do that? Surely he won't harm the girl. Stop asking so many questions, Damon. For what he did to our Luna, I'm sure Aloha Richard has a lot in store for her. I groaned as a dull pain erupted from my head. My hand went up to attempt to try soothe it, only before I felt a bandage wrapped around it. Then it hit me. My eyes shot open, the bright light taking me a few seconds to adjust before I could get a glimpse around me. Gray walls, wooden furniture, large windows. This wasn't the room at the cabin or Alexander's room. Shit, where was Lucas? Was he here too? The questions and panic that overcame me only made my head pound worse. I pulled the sheets from my legs and pulled myself off the bed. My bare feet hit the cold floor as I attempted to slow down my breathing. If I've learned anything from being kidnapped like twice in the last few months, is that they can hear the littlest of things. I swear Alexander could hear a change in my pulse and ask me if I was alright. Alexander, I never thought I would actually want to be back in his safety. My eyes wandered the room for any possible weapons when my eyes landed on the lampshade that was placed on the desk across the room. I quickly made my way over, almost holding my breath to remain as quiet as possible. I pulled the lamp out of the plug before taking it in my hands. I've learned a few tips from the Netflix movies I have watched over the past couple of months. Anything can be a weapon if you use it correctly. I made my way towards the door, silently hoping that outside it would be one of Alexander's guards, and this was all just a misunderstanding. I slipped, bumped my head, and just woke up a little confused. I quickly pulled the door open. If I didn't now, then I would probably back out and wait for them to come to me. I stepped out of the room to find myself in a hallway that seemed never-ending. Countless doors on each side. Of course, this wasn't going to be an easy getaway. I forced myself to take steps forward, my shaky legs barely able to carry me down the hallway. At any moment someone could jump out of one of the doors and I would be busted. I picked up my pace as the end of the hallway became near and I was faced with a black door which stood out in comparison to the brown other ones. Did this mean it was an exit? I was sure going to see. My shaky breath slowed down as my grip on the lamp tightened as I pulled the door open to reveal a set of stairs. I took a deep breath before I began to quickly walk down them. As I got further, I heard people chatting, laughing. I even heard a child cry. My view was now a large room. I gazed through one of the stair bars as I sat down. If I went any further, I would be visible to everyone that was in the room. The room was filled with people, each in their groups, some running around and some laying on the sofas. What was this type of place? Were all these people kidnapped to? My eyes widened as I sat in the stair for a few minutes, watching the people, deciding what my next move would be before a man who I had seen laying on his phone now began walking towards the stairs. What was I meant to do? I couldn't run back up them in time, and where would I go? I almost sighed a sigh in relief when another man who I didn't see in the crowd stopped in just as he was about to take his first step. I was just going to check up on Isabella. The first man sighed, making a gasp come out of me, and their heads to snap in my direction. How the hell did he know my name? Who was he? My mind went into a craze. I didn't even notice how much noise I was making until my hands were shaking. I dropped the lamp, making a large bang erupt. I think it's a little late for that, the other man then mumbled, shaking his head. Alexander's P. Oh. All I could see was red as I slammed my bruised and bloody brother into the wall. How could he let this happen? I gave him a second chance. I trusted him with the only person in this world's life that mattered to me. This is your fault. You are the reason she is missing. I spat into my brother's face as my grip around his neck tightened, and his face became even more purple as he tightened his eyes shut, not fighting back. He knew it was his fault. After we got word that wolves had broken into the house, all I had been seeing was red. Even seeing my brother's battered body on the floor before I even got a hold of him angered me. Not because I was pissed someone had did this to my brother, but because I couldn't do it. He let them wolves take my mate. He was going to pay for it. Alexander, we know how the wolves found out the whereabouts of Isabella. My beta Caleb's voice grabbed my attention as my gaze shifted over to him, as he stepped over the broken front door. We had a mole in the pack, Jensen. He was one of the wolves guarding the house. All the other wolves were killed. Him the only one that was missing, so I sent a few men who tracked him in the woods, he explained. I turned back to face my brother, who winced in pain as my hold tightened. If a hair is out of place on her head, you will pay, I hissed before loosening my grip and letting him drop to the ground. I didn't have time to kill him just yet. My main priority was my mate. I took deep breaths and clenched my fists, my nails digging into my skin. It took all of me not to destiny everything in sight. I wanted to punch every single object in my way. Deep down I blamed myself. I shouldn't have left her alone. Why didn't I think this would happen? I have enemies everywhere. Off-core, they would use Isabella to get to me. As soon as I left the house and my gaze fell on the man that was responsible for this, my anger bubbled as I charged at him, my hands wrapping around his neck as he fell to the ground. Alexander, we need to question him. We need him alive for that, Caleb reminded me. At least someone was thinking straight right now. If it was up to me, he would be dead in 1 second. Where is she? God help you if you don't start fucking speaking, I growled out. I assigned wolves I trusted to guard the house. Never would I have thought this mutt would turn against his own alpha. The man remained silent, a small smirk beginning to rise on his face, which only angered me further. You find this funny? I'll find it funny when I have your family killed and tortured if you don't tell me what you know. And maybe I'll make your death a little less painful, I growled out. Go ahead, the man spluttered out. I know myself could be heartless, but a man that cared more about a stupid revenge plan than his own children was a new level. Now that I realized he wouldn't speak, I shut my eyes before I let my hands tighten fully around his neck until I felt his breath stop. It's the Crescent Moon Pack. That's why they had a picture of her. Now it's time to find them, I stated as I stood up facing Caleb, who nodded. I will do anything to get her back. 25 Isabella SP. OV. As soon as my cover was exposed, I began backing up the stairs, my hand gripping the banister as the two men now followed, climbing the stairs to catch up with me. Isabella, don't move too fast, your head's still swollen, you could get a light head, one of the men called out as they came into my view, now slowly making their way towards me cautiously. Don't touch me, I warned, my voice raising slightly as I was now at the top of the stairs and they only stood a few steps down. My weapon now gone and I had no other way to protect myself. I couldn't outrun them, I could barely run. Okay, we won't. We don't want to hurt you, the same man said as he raised his arms in surrender, as he slowly took a steps closer to me. I've heard that before. He didn't look very old, both of them didn't, maybe 19 or early 20s, they both looked similar. One with brown curly hair and the other with hardly any, making them look different, but their features, small mouth, large brown eyes, their jaw structure the same. My name's Damon, this is my brother Ali. All we want to do is to calm you down, okay? We won't touch you if you don't want us to. How about we take you to the living room? You can get something to eat, Damon, the one with curly hair, softly spoke as he came to a halt only a few steps before me. All right, Damon, you can shut up. You're probably stressing her out even more, the other one. Ali rolled his eyes at his brother. I'm trying to calm her down, Acewol. Unlike you, your bald head is probably what made her scared in the first place. Damon shot back, taking his attention of me and turning to his brother. Stop being such a child. Isabella the first apologized of behalf of my younger brother. His maturity still hasn't come in yet. Ali rolled his eyes, pushing past Lucas. For a moment I was entertained by the two's fighting. I forgot the situation I was in. They reminded me, Kyle, we fought just as much as these two. Not one thing could we ever agree on, even the silliest things like who would get to sit in the front seat or whose turn it was to make tea. Can yous both shut up? You're giving me a headache, I complained, holding my head, which was beginning to pound harder the longer the voices got louder. Couldn't have said it better myself. A deep voice erupted from the bottom of the stairs, causing both boys snap their heads around their fighting stopping. My eyes flashed towards the built man who was now walking towards us, his dirty blonde hair messy on top of his head. I swallowed hard as the two boys now bent their heads down as he made his way up the stairs. Damon, Allie, I will take it from here. His deep voice sent shivers down my spine as the boys without question turned around and made their way down the stairs. Alexander's P. Oh. I groaned, slamming my fist into my desk. Another dead end. 2 days without Isabella was the worst 2 days of my life. I didn't sleep. All I could think about was her. Everywhere I thought she could be, she wasn't. The Crescent Moon Pack had gone all out, covering their tracks. They could be anywhere in this world. For all I knew, she could be getting hurt right now, tortured. The thought of it made me sick. I took her for granted when I had her. Alexander, we will find her. We will search everywhere if we have to. Caleb attempted to reassure me as he lifted his head up from the computer. You don't know that, Caleb. She's a fucking sensitive person. She doesn't know anything about the werewolf thing. Knowing them, they will shift right in front of her. I sighed. And so what if they do? She will understand. She's your mate. Even though she might want to hate you, she can't. She can keep telling herself that, but she knows her feelings for you. Caleb's attempt at reassuring me wasn't working. I treated her like shit when she was here. I didn't want to get attached to her because I didn't want to go through the pain of losing her. I basically locked her up in my room because I didn't want her to find out about what we are. I thought if I was rude and harsh to her, then she would hate me, and she does, and I thought that if she hated me, then losing her wouldn't bother me, but it does. I pushed her away, and for what? What kind of alpha does that to his mate? One that wants to protect her. Alexander, you may have been shitty to her because in general you are a fucking dick sometimes, but everyone in this pack can see you changed. Since she has got here, all you think about is her. When you're not with her and with the warriors, you send someone to check on her every second. For years I've been messing with other packs. I should have known something would come back to her. She's in this position not because of that mole, but because of me. If anything happens her, it's my fault. My voice now coming out hoarse. It was me that ruined her. I destroyed her. If I had have kept my selfish feeling away and let her live her human life, she would still be safe. Isabella SP. OV. I pulled the shorts that covered my legs lower down as I kept my eyes trained on the man. He was only a few feet away from me, busy doing something in the kitchen. After Damon and Allie left, he brought me into one of the rooms I had passed in the hallway. I didn't scream or kick this time, I just observed. If there's anything I learned from getting kidnapped the first time, that screaming isn't going to get you anything other than a sore throat. My eyes gazed over to the window where a bright light was streaming through. I slowly made my way over to it, gazing back at the man every couple of steps as if I was waiting for him to shout at me. But the room remained silent, the only noise my heavy breathing. My eyes gazed out to see green. A large lawn where multiple people were around. Just like the living space I seen, there was children running around, adults talking, and even a few people in the lake. Where exactly was I? You can go outside if you like later. I'm sure Allie or Damon can make time to show you around. The man's voice caused me to snap in his direction to see that he was now setting a plate of what looked like scrambled eggs on the table. I was allowed to go outside. He was defiantly taking a different approach to this whole kidnapping thing. Where am I? I asked, turning around from the window. You're in my lands, Mexico, love. You like scrambled egg, right? He explained as he sat down on one of the bar stools. Mexico? Last time I checked I was in Texas. How did I even bloody get here? Where's Alexander and Lucas? I asked, ignoring his question about scrambled egg. For all I knew, he was even worse than Alexander and would actually physically hurt me. You don't have to worry about him anymore. You're safe here, you can do what you want here. His reassurance only left me on edge even more. I was safe here. Wasn't I safe when I was with Alexander? Eat and then I'll have no trouble answering the rest of your questions. He sent a small smile. If all I had to do was force down some scrambled eggs to get answers, then so be it. Alexander, I'm sure he didn't tell you much, did he? Did he tell you why he brought you to the cabin? The man now known as Richard asked as he plopped down on the sofa beside me, tossing me the bottle of water I wanted. No, he didn't tell me anything. He kept me up in his room the whole time I was there, bar a few occasions, I replied. I had questions swarming my mind that I just wanted answers to, and if Richard was the one that could do that, maybe he wasn't the worst kidnapper after all. Was he nice to you? His next question surprised me. Alexander was difficult. Majority of the time he was rude. He bossed me around and told me what to do, but the feeling I felt in my tummy when I thought of him told me otherwise. I just shook my head at the answer as I came up with my own ones. Why did you kidnap me? I asked, which caused a laugh to erupt from his mouth. Kidnap you? Love, I saved you from that monster. You're telling me that you would call this kidnapping? He chuckled, shaking his head at my question. Monster? I mean, it was an accurate description, but how would Richard know? Did Richard know Alexander? If he did, then I don't really blame him from using that term to describe him. No, well, I mean, yes. How would you like it, bloody waking up in a different place every day, not know what you're waking up to? I shot back. He could hardly say he didn't kidnap me. Fair enough, but Isabella, I'm not like him. I won't lock you up all day. I'll tell you everything you need to know. Richard sighed as he got up from his position on the sofa. There's something you don't know about Alexander, about me even. About the people that surround you, Richard continued as he made his way over to the door before turning around and giving me a nod as to follow him. I want you to trust me. And by doing that I may scare the shit out of you at first, but trust me, everything will make more sense. He nodded more as so to himself as he began to walk out of the room. He was scaring me right now. What did he mean, everything would make more sense? Yes, I got so confused at Alexander's as the days went on, especially when I heard phrases like Alpha or Luna. Was he going to tell me what these words meant? I quickly made my way up from the sofa and followed him out of the door to see him already halfway down the hallway. I quickly ran to keep up with his quick pace until he stopped at one of the doors. He looked back at me, giving me a small smile before pushing open the door. My eyes scanned around the room only to find it was empty. One wall, however, was replaced with a full line of windows. My eyebrows furrowed in confusion as I made my way over, Richard following behind me. My eyes scanned the outside. What was he trying to show me? What was the people outside meant to mean? I stared back at Richard in confusion, only for him to point his finger to a place outside. I followed his gaze until my eyes set on a boy. He looked around mid-teens as he began undressing. My eyes widened as the boy proceeded to take off his clothes. What was he doing? There was women and children around him playing, and none of them took notice of now the naked boy. I remained silent as I felt his eyes burn into mine as if we was waiting for my reaction. The next moment of my life I was never forget. The boy bent over, so he was now on his hands and knees before his body began to disform. His spine and his back began to come outwards and expand. I felt my breathing get heavier, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. His skin color then began to change into a dark gray color, and just as quick as it started in his place was now a werewolf. 26 Isabella SP. OV. I felt my heart pace speed up as I felt like my head was spinning. It felt as though what I had just witnessed was fake. Out of a movie, but it happened clear as day. A boy turned into a beast. It couldn't be possible. That only happened in bloody twilight, not in real life. It had to be staged. They were trying to mess with me. Play a sick, cruel joke on me just to get me scared and get a reaction. Isabella, what you just seen, it's normal, alright? Well, not normal for you, normal for us. Just take a minute and calm down. I will explain everything, Richard mumbled as I felt his hand on my shoulder attempting to calm me down. Normal. What did he mean it was normal for him? Last time I looked, humans were humans, and that was that. There was no bloody breaking bones and turning into a werewolf all of a sudden. I quickly jumped back out of his grasp. If that boy had just turned into that monster, was he one as well? Is that what Alexander had been hiding from me? Was he one of these beasts as well? Calm down. You expect me to watch that and be calm? Stop messing with me, I'm not joking. You said Alexander was a monster, but you're a sick wanker for showing me that and lying to me. I raged. I didn't want to believe him. How could I even believe him? I think I would know if Alexander was a bloody dog. After all, I was with him for months. I want to help you understand. I knew if I didn't show you, you would never believe me. It's not a joke. You think I would joke about something like this? Richard's now slightly irritated voice questioned as he took steps towards me. Stop. Stop talking, stop coming near me, I screamed. I didn't want a monster to touch me, never mind talk to me. Richard stared at me, his eyes showing no remorse for what he had just showed me. It's almost like he wanted this to wreck me. He knew this would do this to me, yet he still showed me. I thought he was bloody nice. Richard nodded slowly, saying nothing else before he dug his hand into his pocket, pulling out his phone. Here, call your family. Talk to them, but please don't tell them of what you just saw. I'll give you time to come to terms with that, and when you're ready I'll explain everything to you, alright? He mumbled as he leaned his hand out, handing me his phone. I stared at the phone. I hadn't talked to my family in months. Alexander wouldn't even think of letting me see them, never mind talk to them. I looked at Richard before I stared at the phone. No matter how much I wanted to scream and hit him for what he had just exposed me to, I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to talk to my family. I wiped the tear away that hadn't stopped flowing down my face as soon as I heard the familiar voice of my parents on the other side of the phone. After 2 hours of me mostly crying and my parents crying, the call was over. Richard's phone had run out of battery. Suspiciously, they didn't ask where I was, they just wanted to know if I was alright, if I'd been hurt. Mentally, yes, physically, not really. That sparked the question in my mind, did they know? My grandma must have knew something as she knew Lucas. Did she tell them? Is that why they never got the police involved? They both sounded so broken almost. I hadn't thought from their side what it would have been like to have their daughter ripped away from them in a blink in the eye and not being able to do a thing about it. I still wanted to talk to so many people. My brother had been gone at the time I rang. If it wasn't for Richard's phone dying, I wouldn't have ended the call. I had so much stuff I wanted to say, but yet my mind went blank when talking to them. I pulled myself off the floor, the previous events coming back into my mind. For 2 hours I had forgot. It was like I was escaping reality, and now I was back with thousands of questions. I was living amongst werewolves. How did I not know? How did Alexander manage to keep that a secret from me? I slept in a bed with a werewolf. I kissed a werewolf. I kissed a dog. Suddenly the door opened and in came Damon with a tray of food in his hand, smiling, but underneath that was a beast. Someone that could easily rip me apart. You all right? I brought you some soup. Thought you might be a bit hungry, after all that. He smiled. He looked so innocent as he placed the Gary before me and sitting down. I eyed him up and down. How could such a thing be possible? Did that mean Twilight was real? Vampires were real too. Were these people born like that, or did someone have to bite them so they could become a werewolf? I'm not going to bite you, sorry. Soon he stopped joking after he realized I wasn't finding any of it funny. How could he joke knowing that my world had just been flipped upside down? I looked down at the food. I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Not even Lucas, I thought he really cared for. But turns out he was a lying monster like everyone else. Isabella, please don't hate us for what we showed you. Alexander, he kept you in the dark about these things. He lied to you. He didn't tell you who he really was. We want your trust, and we want you to know that we won't lie to you. If we were to fully gain your trust, we had to show you who we really were. Damon sighed as he set the books he carried in beside the tray. Plus tell Richard this, but he can be a little intense sometimes. I could have just told you. I'm sure you would have been less scared, he continued. Damon seemed harmless, as did Allie, but I thought that about Lucas as well. Damon could have been just trying to get on my good side until he decided when he was going to eat me. These books, they will tell you everything you need to know. Call me or Allie. Wait, no, just call me if you need anything. I'm sure I'll be about somewhere, Damon sighed before standing up to his full height. I stared down at the books. I didn't know if I wanted to find out more, but then again, what could shock me more? My eyes furiously scanned the pages as each page I read shocked me even more. In the werewolf community there are different packs. Each pack has an alpha who is the leader, a beta who helps the alpha and steps in when he's gone, and a gamma who also helps. They are all in packs like a pack of wolves, only they are people. Another thing that shocked me that I had to read the page twice to see if I was imagining it was that these wolves can communicate through their minds. They can mind link each other. Also, majority of the people are born into it. They have their first shift at the age of 18. If I didn't know any better, it was like I reading a fiction book, not a proper textbook with accurate information. The thing I was currently reading was about mates. Each werewolf had one somewhere. Mates are paired together by the moon goddess, whoever that was. Basically, whoever your mate was, you had to be with them whether you liked it or not. I felt my eyes become heavy as I peered out the window. It was now pitch black outside. God knows how long I have been reading from. The soup that Damon had brought me was now cold. I had forgot about it as soon as I pulled out one of the books he had left me. All this information was shocking me. Isabella, you've been in here for hours, love. Do you want to go on a walk? Richard's voice caused me to snap my head up to see him standing directly above me. I didn't even hear him come on. I wasn't sure how I felt about this yet. I knew there was nothing I could do about it. I was surrounded by wolves. I pulled the jumper Richard had handed me closer to my body as the wind began to pick up, blowing my hair that I threw into a bun into my face. 5 minutes into the walk and none of us had spoken a word. I just enjoyed my surroundings. I hadn't been outside in so long. I didn't want the werewolf thing to ruin it for me. I'm sorry if I scared you earlier. Richard broke the silence. I turned to see that he was looking down at his feet as we walked. Are you? I questioned. By the sounds of it, he didn't seem that sorry for showing me. If anything, he thought he was doing me a favor, and maybe he was. I probably wouldn't have believed him if he didn't. He looked up at me before a small smile formed on his face and he began shaking his head. Richard seemed nice. He wasn't the average kidnapper that locked you in a room and kept you from your family. Instead, he let me go anywhere and let me talk to my family, more than Alexander did. Okay, so what are you in your pack? I asked. It felt weird asking these types of questions that I never thought I'd be asking. I'm the Alpha, Damon is the Beta, and Ali is the Gamma. Alexander, he is the Alpha of his pack. You've probably never met his Beta before, he explained. Unlike Alexander, Richard told me the truth. Do you have a mate? It felt wired asking that. I have used the word mate many times. It means friend where I'm from, but here it literally means the person you're meant to be with. Richard remained silent for a few seconds, and it seemed like he was debating on whether he wanted to answer that one. I had one. She looked like you. Short brown hair. Looked like she was bloody, made by the moon goddess herself. Richard's voice was laced with sadness. I wondered what happened for her, but knowing that patience wasn't a trait a lot of werewolves had, I decided it would be better to leave it alone. How do you know if you have one? I asked. That it didn't say in the books how you know who's your mate. Do you suddenly look into someone's eyes and then it clicks in your head that's your mate? For me, it was as soon as I laid eyes on her. Thoughts of your mate just consume you. Everything about them is perfect. Everything mates touch, it's like a spark of electricity. You just realize, Richard explained. His words clicked in my head. Alexander, every time he bloody touched me, it would feel like I just got shocked. No matter how hard I try to hate him, the feeling my Richardak has tells my otherwise. Every time I look into his eyes, I forget about his shitty personality. That's when I realized Alexander and I were mates. 27 Isabella SP. OV. I was a mate. I had a mate, and not the friend type of mate. I had the type of one who you were destined to be with for the rest of your life, paired together by some sort of fate that you had no choice to take part in. Human or not, if you had a mate, then you could say goodbye to your family, your plans for the rest of your life, and really having any sort of control over any decision you now made. That's what Alexander did to me. He took me away from everyone I knew and loved. He kept me locked up in his room for months without even mentioning the fact that, by the way, I'm a werewolf. He ruined all my plans I had for my future. Finishing school, applying to university I will never get to experience. Driving for the first time, crashing my parents' car for the first time. Getting rejected from university I will never get to do. I'm stuck with him, and it's not the case anymore where in my brain I thought that he had mental problems and had kidnapped me out of spite, still questioning that. But now, instead of dreaming for the day I would get out, I know that I can never leave him. He was the rest of my life. Alexander probably didn't like it at first either. I mean, he was probably disappointed at having a human mate. Maybe that's why he was so harsh to me. His whole life he had this idea of having a strong mate, someone who wanted this life, and then I was thrown there. I should feel upset, sad, and I did for the first couple of hours, but then my anger set in at Lucas, Alexander, and my grandma. She has had to know that they were both wolves, and how she allowed me to come visit in the first place, knowing the risk that she was taking, surprised me. Lucas, I thought he would have at least let something out about the secret life he lived in. Alexander, I spent 20 Alexander hours with him. I feel stupid for not noticing. The feelings I felt towards him, the sparks whenever he would touch me, the butterflies I would feel in the pit of my Richardak every time I looked at him. It wasn't me, it wasn't my fault, it was the mate pull. Even now, I should feel happy that I was away from him, that for once he wasn't breathing down my neck, but all I wanted was for him to wrap his arms around me and his breathing calm me down. Just knowing his presence was near made me feel protected, and now that he wasn't here I felt exposed. I shook my head, angry at myself. It wasn't me that wanted Alexander, it was the mate pull. Thoughts of him consumed me, but I couldn't let this stupid mate thing get the better of me. It changed nothing. Alexander still snatched me from my room and did all those horrible things to me. He wasn't doing it out of love, all he wanted was his mate. I groaned as a pounding pain erupted from my head as I pulled myself out of the bed that I had just spent most of the day in. Damon and Ollie had came up a few times, just checking up on me, giving me food. I made my way over to the window, staring out as to all the people or wolves that wandered about the grass. I wondered if all packs were like this. What was Alexander's like? Isabella, you haven't left your room all day. Damon just informed me. Are you all right? Richard's voice surprised me as I spun around to see him leaning against the wall. I didn't even hear him come in. I still wasn't sure on Richard yet. He seemed nice. I mean, he did give me a bed in his house, give me clothes and food, but I couldn't shake off the fact that his presence made my skin crawl. I'm fine, just tired. I lied. I wasn't fine, and I defiantly wasn't tried. How could someone possibly be fine after their whole world was just flipped upside down? How could someone be fine when they have just realized that their kidnapper is basically their husband? He nodded before coming to stand beside me. I held my breath as I felt his hand come ink intact with my brown hair, combing a piece of it out. Tell me about Alexander, I want to know about his pack, I spoke, quickly moving and making my way over to the bed. I didn't like when he touched me or when anyone touched me, not knowing that they were in fact animals. It's plain and simple, Isabella. Alexander is an alpha of an extremely large and powerful pack. Bloodstone pack, they attack, kill, terrorize innocent packs for the fun of it, murdering tens of thousands of children and women. Alexander is a murderer, and I can't help but pity you, as no one should be burdened with being his mate. Everyone in that pack since birth is brought up to kill. No mercy is shown by any one of them. If you weren't his mate, I'm sure you'd be gone. Not one person in that pack has a heart. His words made tears burn at the back of my eyes as disbelief washed over me. I shook my head. This can't be true. Alexander wouldn't be capable of such acts. He would carry out such doings. Lucas, there wasn't a bad bone in his body. This all had to be lies or rumors. I know it's hard to hear, Isabella, but we want to help you. You live in constant danger with Alexander. He has enemies all over, and to get to him they will use you, and we don't want to see another person die at the hands of Alexander, Richard continued. I wanted him to stop talking, but at the same time these were the answers I'd wanted for months. It's easy, Alexander has made sure to already mark you, but to undo the mate bond between you and him, you sleep with me. Richard carried on, now sitting only a few centimeters from my face, his hand reaching out and wiping away the tears. I felt my heart rate speed up. Even the thought of Richard's body on me wanted me to be sick. I didn't want to believe him, but somehow his words were now imprinted in my mind, and images of Alexander killing innocent people and then coming home and laying with me in bed haunted my mind. What do you get out of it? I questioned through my sobs. Alexander took away something that I will never be able to get back. He killed my mate Teresa. I'd only just met her when his pack attacked, and she was one of the victims. I want revenge on him, but I could never hurt an innocent human who had no idea of what Alexander was really like, Richard explained. My head felt like it was spinning. This was my only way out. I had no choice. I squeezed my eyes shut as a sick feeling that had settled in my Richardak only grew as I felt his hot breath fan my neck, making me want to push him off me straight away. I tried to imagine I was somewhere else, like back at home with Kyle fighting over the remote. I felt his hands begin to unbutton my top as I had to dig my nails in my hands at the disgust that I had felt. This didn't feel right. It should be easy, sleep with Richard and no more Alexander. But it wasn't. For some reason all I wanted now was Alexander. I felt my heart rate speed up. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want my first time being with Richard, someone I had only met, and just to a part of some revenge plot. Richard the first changed my mind. I don't want to do this, I breathed out as his heavy weight on top of me only added to my anger, as I placed my hands on his chest attempting to push him off. I'm doing you a favor, Isabella. You'll thank me for this. Richard shook my comments off as his hands pushed mine away and continued buttoning my top down. My eyes widened as I realized that he wasn't listening to me. He was much stronger than me. How was I meant to get him to stop? Surely he wouldn't do such a thing. I said no. I snapped, pulling my body from underneath him only for him to release a growl and his hands grip onto my waist, yanking me down as he tore my top off. I felt tears burn at the side of my eyes as Kay frantically attempted to push his hands off only for him to grab hold of them with one of his other hands. This was it. It was actually going to happen, and I could do nothing to stop him. Get the hell of her before I rip your throat, the all too familiar voice of Lucas growled, and in an instant the weight of Richard's body came flying of me. My eyes widened as I blinked just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Lucas was the last Perks I expected to show up. His eyes met with mine only for a moment before he rushed towards Richard, throwing his body on top of his, which was only beginning to rise from the floor. Tears continued to flow before me as I just stared at the scene playing out before me. Daikon was on top of Richard, pounding his fists into him. I literally thought I seen steam come out of his ears. I was frozen in my place, not able to move. A minute ago I was on the verge of being raped, and now I'm watching the guy being killed. Richard's words haunted me. Every eye in his pack are brought up to kill, and Lucas was no exception. Maybe I should have let Richard do it. It was save me from the other monsters. I pulled my shaky body of the bed, trying not to make any noise other than the groans that Richard was letting out. Only my shaky hand banged into the lamp, shattering it to the ground, causing Lucas to look up at me. I once looked at Lucas like he was the only one that could save me. I thought he out of all people cared about me and was innocent, but the blood that splattered his face and arms told me otherwise. Isabella, are you all right? Did he touch you? Lucas's frantic voice filled the room as he stood up from Richard's now bloody body that had gone quiet. Did you just kill him? I panicked as I stared at Richard's non-moving body as it lay limp on the floor before flashing to Lucas to see confusion written on his face as he began to make his way towards me. Don't come near me, Lucas, I warned. I didn't know who he was anymore. I couldn't trust him. My eyes flashed out the window only for my heart to drop further as previously people running around and laughing was now filled with terror, fighting. I watched as people transformed into beasts, each time pouncing on top of another like a pack of dogs. Isabella, please don't look at that, Lucas pleaded, but his voice no longer brought me comfort as it used to do. It only reminded me of what he just down a few seconds ago. I never thought I'd hear myself say it, but I wanted Alexander. I wanted his hands to take away the thought of Richard's hands being all over me. I looked back at Lucas. He wasn't so innocent. I thought Alexander was the bad one and that Dyken was the good brother, but how could he be so calm about what he just did? I took a deep breath before my eyes flashed towards the door, and without thinking I bolted out my legs, running down the familiar corridor that I had walked down with Damon and Allie multiple times. I pulled open the door only for it to be pushed open at the same time, causing me to be pushed back as the person on the other side was stronger. I regained my balance before my eyes flashed up to meet the eyes of someone who an hour ago I never wanted to see again but now wanted to see more than ever. Before I could open my mouth to speak, his arms reached out, his hands gripping onto my bare waist due to Richard pulling my top off, only leaving me in a bra. Tingles shots up down where he touched as he pulled me into his hoodie-covered chest as his hand left my waist, the other one holding me up as he wiped away the tears that had not stopped falling down my face, only his heavy breathing to be heard. Before I could think, he placed his hand on my cheek, my eyes dropping to his lips that for once I wanted so badly just to touch. So before I could stop myself and second think it, I leaned towards him and placed my lips on top of his, sending waves of shocks throughout my whole body. And for once I didn't push him away, knowing this is what I needed right now. I needed Alexander. If you're curious about the fate of Alexander and Isabella, click subscribe and don't miss a single episode.